Much of the new canon of Star Wars still remains unaddressed, so I will be pulling a substantial amount of information from the now Legends materials to help flesh out the blue-skinned, red-eyed and enigmatic Chiss. What's more, the Chiss are notoriously withdrawn and a reclusive people who reveal very little about their homeworld or culture and are seldom seen in the wider galactic community. Basically, the first rule of Chiss Club is you do not talk about Chiss Club. Hi, Rick here, not talking about the Chiss Ascendancy in this index. The Chiss hail from the unknown regions of the Star Wars galaxy. This distant location sits apart from the majority of galactic civilization due to its hazardous navigational anomalies, alien threats, and a lack of hyperspace lanes. Effectively, here be dragons. Amid the unexplored void lies the planet Scylla, a water-ice rock where few except the Chiss have ever been. It's one of the few locations that are accessible in the unknown regions, but even then, you have to know the way. It lies across two hyperspace routes, the Path of Houses and the Vagrari Corridor. Despite its freezing climate, Scylla is similar to Earth, having a slightly longer 25-hour day and a slightly smaller diameter of 11,080 kilometers. It had a network of underground caves that connected cities and colonies. These tunnels featured interconnected transports. The capital city was Xaplar, which played host to the government of the Chiss Ascendancy, making Scylla the capital of the reclusive empire. Due to its frigid environment, it had to import much of its food and resources. The Chiss Ascendancy were ruled by the SWTOR, the individuals of the ruling families or houses. These houses set out the law for the entire Ascendancy and included the Xaplar, the unwise, the Irokini, and the Sabason, and others. The houses were not necessarily related by blood, but could merit adopt members into their fold, giving them significant status, though the methods varied from family to family. The House of unwise, for example, would grant exemplary members of the military the status of trial-born and potential for marriage into the house. This is because each house was responsible for certain areas of society and had the final say in decisions within their purview, though the number of these houses has risen and fallen with time. This is likely due to the internal power plays from the ruling families as they sought to leverage control from each other frequently, but not at the cost of undermining the entire ascendancy. A seldom used punishment for a Chiss who broke the law, including endangering the Chiss people, was exile. There are rumoured to be 28 colony worlds in the Chiss Ascendancy, each with a democratically elected official making up the Chiss Parliament. It was the Parliament who made the day-to-day decisions and kept the worlds running, while large issues were brought before the ruling houses. Alongside the Parliament was the Cabinet, the executive branch of politics, where 28 governors sat. Each colony world was protected by the colonial phalanxes, military forces that worked in tandem with the larger Chiss Expansionary Defence Force, the main fleet of the Ascendancy. The head of the phalanx was called a Syndic. The main forces of the military operated at the behest of the SWTOR, but were seldom utilised for warfare, more often for, as the name suggests, exploration, charting and defence. Ideas of conquest and forceful expansion were largely ignored, but they were not obstinate pacifists either. They placed a great emphasis on maintaining the secrecy of their total military strength, number of colonies, locations of hyperspace lanes and planets and so on, and therefore were a methodical race when it came to expansion and dealing with external powers. In point of fact, no civilian body of Chiss have ever been encountered within their own borders, a testament to their own meticulous caution. From a practical standpoint, an open war with the Chiss Ascendancy would reveal a great deal about the species' capabilities to their enemy and draw greater attention to their space. Better to avoid conflict where possible and rely on the discretion and the natural barriers of the unknown regions. A Chiss serving in the military was expected to abandon their familial ties and therefore any favouritism they may benefit from, making the CEDF a true meritocracy where skill was rewarded. Once their service was over, however, they were allowed to return to their prior family life, providing they weren't adopted into another house. The typical Chiss was a collected and rational individual who understood the value of knowledge, placing intellectualism over violence. However, they had a reputation for being aloof geniuses. Can't imagine where people get that impression from. Though it is true they place a great emphasis on being well educated, polite and creative, an outsider would likely find them to be more reserved in person, as they are an isolated species. Their inhospitable homeworld and the dangerous nature of the unknown regions forces them to be very self-reliant and independent, but loyal to each other. They appreciate and commit to a community and their race, but are aware to not take that safety for granted. This independent streak, combined with their society's secretive ways, means that general prying into a Chiss's private affairs would be considered rude and not a general topic of conversation outside of close circles. And good luck trying to get a rise out of a Chiss. As mentioned, most of their culture and climate has led to them being collected and controlled on every level. They often dressed in bold colours associated with the ruling houses and sported capes and robes, likely to protect from the cold. As mentioned, few, if any, civilian Chiss have been encountered, and those who were met outside of Chiss space and integrated with the cultures around them. What we do see plenty of is the Chiss military. The CDF was overseen by the unwruodo house, but instead of flying its colours, those who served wore black, as it represented no colour and all shades. Rank was displayed on the epaulettes and were styled to be very official with high collars. Usually the only colour on the uniforms served to denote position, squadron and specialisation. The uniforms did vary from division to division as expected, but all retained that, well, imperialistic look. Chiss feature no additional aptitude for the Force, but can include Force-sensitive individuals, as most other species. A genetic analysis of the Chiss shows their biology to be that of near-human, and may even suggest a common ancestor from at least 27,000 BBY. Chiss names consisted of 2 family names and 1 given name. The full names were used in formal occasions and for the meeting of strangers, while an abbreviated form was reserved for frequent usage. For example, mitth'raw'nuruodo. The first name is a family name, likely of blood relation as seen in sibling names. The last name is the house to which the individual belongs, in this case unwruodo. And the middle section is the name given at birth, Ra. As this is akin to a person introducing themselves with a full name, the shorthand is a combination of the childhood name and the family names, usually taken from the letters around the given name. So, mitth'raw'nuruodo becomes Thrawn. This naming structure varies somewhat, occasionally with the house name being first and the common name not always being forced to use the exact same format to condense it. The Chiss, above all, knew the value of knowledge and archived all information that was uncovered by the Defence Force in the Expeditionary Library. Here, the works were not only stored in traditional data format, but copied onto archaic paper in case of data corruption or damage to their systems from the ice. This level of detail of the dangerous unknown regions made the Chiss knowledge a valuable resource for any wishing to venture beyond the safety of galactic civilization, and the Ascendancy knew it, and it would leverage it to protect their independence. A common procedure for the Chiss was to send out their own ambassador who would integrate with a society or government, observe events and, if possible, protect Chiss interests from inside these other institutions. One such emissary was Thrawn. Possessing the methodical ingenuity and intellectual curiosity typical of his people, he was selected to infiltrate the Galactic Empire to verify their potential and prepare them as allies of the Chiss under the pretense of exile. Thanks for watching this cultural index on the Chiss Ascendancy, a species so good it was invented twice. I find it funny that in some ways Grand Admiral Thrawn was a typical representative of his species, but atypical in others. The fact that they so protectively and efficiently guard their space and people is a fairly unique trait in the Star Wars universe. Where many of the races have existed and mingled with one another for millennia, the Chiss have remained loyal to themselves and removed, but the expansion of civilization will inevitably bring them into the fold. Though on the plus side, they have successfully sat out most major galactic conflicts, while the rest of the galaxy succumbed to interstellar battles. Star Wars, if you will. I'll see myself out. The next index will be a viewer-voted one again, and this time the choices are either from another band of isolationists, the Fallout Universe's Institute, or perhaps we revisit Trek with another race that was seldom seen, the Remans of the Romulan Empire. Vote below in the comments by liking the option, and until next time, thanks again for watching. I've been Rick. Thanks, and goodbye.